Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hi, hello. If this is Monday, I must be Lynn Cullen, and this must be, here. I'm a little out of it today, but then I say that most days. How you doing? It's a beautiful Monday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's the way we say it here if you're listening from elsewhere. And it is the 28th of April, which means May's coming this week. Who knew? That's great. All right, a sort of easy, interesting, and informative program today. That cannot always be said of these programs. We will be joined in 15, 20 minutes by a friend and extremely interesting woman who we're going to be talking about, Pete Seeger. He would have been 95 years old this weekend, but unfortunately he died in January. So this is a sort of a birthday celebration of a truly great man. If you do crossword puzzles, it's a word I've never heard anybody use, but if you do crossword puzzles, you know it. I've started to use the word, but when I say it, nobody knows what I mean. So, if a word nobody uses, it sort of doesn't be anyway. The word is, it's a 4-letter word. That's all it is. O-N-E-R. Pronounced oner. And a oner is no one like him. No one like him. Fred Rogers told us all we're all unique. We're all special. But with a nod to Fred, some people are specialer. Because not everybody who's special is a oner. But Seeger was a oner. All right, so I was out of town all weekend, and I'm not really... I don't think anything major happened around these parts over the weekend. Did they? I sort of looked. I want to just start with something a little easy, which is what I like to do on a Monday anyway. I am by nature sort of a loner, and so I happened to come across yesterday, stuck at O'Hare Airport, 2 articles that I don't know I would have normally read, but because I had lots of time to kill, I did. And both are related. One is about a man who lives in Astoria, Queens, part of New York City, who, to make extra money, because he needs it, he rents out his spare bedroom to strangers who are travelers to the United States and want to, Canada. You know what a room costs in New York City? I mean, a hotel with bed bugs, costs hundreds and hundreds a night. So there's a website, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but it is for people who are traveling internationally and simply want a nice, cheap place to lay their heads. And then it involves people like him willing to let perfect strangers into their house to stay in their apartment and pay them money. Now, he rents his spare bedroom out for $85 a night. And there's someone in it almost every day. Almost every day. He made close to $20,000 last year doing this. Now, to do this, you have to be, so in other words, he's got one apartment, he's got a kitchen, a living room, and 2 bedrooms. And so that means he's sharing that very intimate space with perfect strangers, often people who barely speak English. But he's an outgoing guy. So he sort of enjoys it. They sort of enjoy him. He's made friends over the years. But I was thinking, could you do that? Could you do that? He lets the people, he sort of runs it a little like a hotel in that he puts out little snacks for them. He takes care of the bed and, washes the towels and stuff. He often finds himself eating with them. He lets them use the entire apartment so that he might come home and there's someone cooking in his kitchen and eating his food. I would die. I would die. But they help pay the mortgage. And so the New York Times did this rather long piece on him. And what a wonderful guy he is. Because he's just one of these people who's a welcoming soul. He's not really there that much. He has a full-time job at Carnegie Hall, although I think they say Carnegie Hall. And he also is an avid runner, so he's out running every day. And but when he shows up at his house, no telling who he's going to find. I can't believe it. Over the past 10 months, he has had 72 strangers living with him. They've been drinking his beer. They've eaten his muffins. They've come from Italy, Canada, India, South Korea, Belgium, France, New Zealand, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, and on and on and on. This is where, and the thing is, this guy lives a rich life. When you're that open to experience and other people, you're obviously going to live a wonderful life. And that's what the second article was about. Almost as serendipitously, it popped into my line of vision. And this was from Sunday's New York Times. And it's about a photographer. In part, it's about a photographer who stops strangers, again, this is the overall theme, strangers, who stops strangers on a street and asks them to interact with each other. And while they're interacting with each other, he takes, I just spit on myself, he takes their picture. And what's odd, they show 4 of these pictures, and you would think these people were long-lost friends. By virtue of simply being told to interact with strangers, there's an immediate kind of intimacy that is created, which he shows. Anyway, they go into the science of being open to strangers. And social scientists have done a lot of studies on this kind of thing. And what's fascinating is they have found that the more you are willing to truly interact with strangers, others, the happier you are. So if you're one of those people who never, ever, ever, ever would start a conversation with someone sitting next to you on the bus, you might want to get outside your comfort zone and try to do it. Because they've actually done studies with people who have been told that they have to sit down on the bus or the subway And rather than do what they usually do, which is not make eye contact, not in any way engage anybody else, just do your thing, get on your cell phone, blah, 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 they were asked to engage whoever sat next to them. And the study shows that all of the assumptions that you make are incorrect. One, that the person would not want you to interact with them. See, that I would think that'd be me. I don't want you to interact with me. But then I started to remember the times that I have gotten on the bus and someone has insisted that I interact with them. Invariably, those are interesting, if not, what's the word? I can't think of it. Encounters. They're, happiness inducing. So the article says that in these, none of the people who tried to engage others were snubbed. The conversations that ensue are invariably pleasant. And so this article is about the fact that our assumption that no one wants to be bothered and that we don't want to be bothered is sort of an incorrect one. By putting in our earbuds, by avoiding contact, we're following what the social scientists say is a collective assumption that turns out to be totally false. And then they go into this other stuff. See, what's great about strangers is we treat them better than we treat our friends. The thing about strangers is we treat them better than we treat people we love. Think about it. If you're crabby, who are you willing to be crabby around, really crabby around? Jess is looking at me like, huh? I'm crabby around everybody. But Jess, you're not normal. Most people will be crabby and short and, with family members, right? And maybe some really close friends. But with people who aren't, you immediately revert to your better behavior. You do. And this is provable. So, forced to interact with a stranger, you invariably, even if you're not wanting to talk to anybody, invariably 99% of people will perk up and engage. And in the act of engaging, guess what happens? They often improve their mood. So I guess my whole little shtick here is about, and I'm repeating it so that maybe I myself hear it, because this is not me. I tend to isolate. I don't interact. And they say that strangely, we assume that our sense of well-being has everything to do with the most important people in our lives and our interactions with them. And again, these social studies say, I hate to tell you this, guys, that a lot of how you're feeling on any given day depends on your casual interactions with the person who you're paying the clerk at the store, the bus driver, the checkout guy, the person at the grocery store that you happen to bump into. Studies show that extroverts and introverts both feel happier on days when they had more social interactions, even if they're fleeting, even if it's simply a smile and a thank you, that people who engage in that way are going to be happier. And this is the weird part. Those interactions with people who are not close, who are strangers, we're back to the strangers, those interactions with strangers correlate every bit as high with happiness with your ensuing happiness as interactions with those that you have your strongest ties with. And a lot of this, and then that reminds me of how, we hear that people who've had Botox are not as empathetic as others, or as they used to be, because what we find out is that Botox freezes your face, makes it harder to smile. And as soon as you, or make it harder to express sorrow in your eyes, like if somebody's telling you a sad story, we tend to mirror their emotion. So you would then, look at them with a sad face. If you've had Botox and can't really do a sad face anymore, guess what happens? It's the musculature, it's the face going sad that tells your brain to be sad. It is your face doing a smile that alerts your brain that you must be happy. So anyone who smiles, sincerely smiles, is going to be happier. It just works that way. And so it works that way. Everybody, I'm just telling you, be nice. Be nice to everybody. Interact with everybody. You will be the happier for it. Says right here in the paper of record. And one of the lead researchers on one of these studies says, this is one of the few research projects that actually changed the way I live my life. This scientist saw the results and thought, oh my God, well, I'm going to start interacting more with everybody, just being there. And lo and behold, I'll be happier. It's pretty cool, huh? Huh? All right. Obit of the day. I don't know. See, this guy wouldn't have gotten an obit if his father hadn't been who his father was, because here's his name, Paul Robeson Jr. So it's Senior who was famous. His father is a remarkable man, just remarkably gifted in every way, brilliant, extraordinary physical athlete, musician, singer. Hello, caller.
Yeah, Clarence from Canonsburg. Hi.
Clarence from Canonsburg. Hi.
I'm only calling because, this whole interacting with people thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I work at home. Only have 2 dogs here, so I don't have interaction, at the workplace or so
Right.
But you put me in a, at the grocery store or in a bank or something, I become like an entertainer. I'm always talking to the.
I bet you are, yeah.
My best bit that I did, I always tell people this, is it was the PNC Bank in Canonsburg. New woman there who calls me up to, okay, next. And I go and I trip. I fake like I'm tripping.
Uh-huh.
And I get up and say, can you give me my balance, please? Right? She cracked up laughing. She wants me to do it to every new teller, but I mean, that was yours especially. I don't do that all the time. But yeah, it's like I got a long conversation. I know it was ticket people. I couldn't leave with it was the checkout kid at the Shop of Save in Canonsburg about dark matter.
Wow.
So we're having a conversation as I'm in line, and then I couldn't leave until we finished. And
wait. I want to know one thing.
What's that?
Was there someone behind you in
line?
Yeah.
I got out of line. He checked me out, and then I just didn't leave.
Oh, okay.
He was still checking people,
okay.
We were still going.
Okay, just didn't want you holding up the line.
I didn't hold up the line.
Okay.
I just kept going, but he and I just kept talking about this whole thing we've gotten to this whole physics thing. And it was all about me making a joke about him. Can't you add?
And that led, and so, and you do this because, obviously you do this because it makes you happy.
Yeah, I mean, I almost have to do it. I can't just sit there and be an automaton walking through the, walking through the planet. As a matter of fact, the guy early this morning, I went up and went to a Sheetz, and really early this morning because I didn't have any nicotine. So anyway, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and a guy, I drive a burgundy SUV, type of car, and this guy parked right next to me in this burgundy SUV kind of car, had on one of those, what I call old man caps, and a little leather jacket. And I look at him, I said, "Are you me?" It's a little white guy. And he didn't know what to do. I just said, "Are you me?" I said, we got like the whole same thing going on. I said, "Maybe you're from an alternate universe or something, but you better not be me." He didn't know what to say.
He really didn't. Do you think you made him? Maybe you made him
out,
uncomfortable. You made him. He didn't know what to do with you.
Exactly. Yeah. But hey.
But
later
you
on today, it was too early for him. Like, oh, I get it.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, it is words to the wise. I mean, clearly. So I'm hoping that this will help. I think I interact more than I realize I do, because I don't like to be rude to people. So I mean, I'm nice to clerks and stuff like that. But this just makes sense. To be honest, I'm more uncomfortable not interacting. Yeah. Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. I do.
It just feels weird to just be sitting there beside somebody and not talking to them.
Right.
I can't even pass somebody on the street without at least like waving my hand or saying hi.
Well, that's true too. I find myself smiling. Yes, hello. I mean, I know. It's good. That's good. Yeah. Thank you, Clarence.
Okay. Have a wonderful life.
Yes, you too.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Not going to get to my obit. Yeah, I am, because it'll help segue into our next segment. So Paul Robeson. Oh, God. Hello.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Hey, I wanted to tell you, 75% of all studies are wrong. You know how I know that? Because a study told me that. Have a good day.
You too. You guys are funny. So anyway, this is the son who has now died of Paul Robeson, 86 he was. He was an author, and he really built his entire life around his father and attempting to keep his legacy alive. And you may recall that a play was on Broadway called Paul Robeson. I think, didn't James Earl Jones do it? Makes sense that he would have. I don't see that in here. And the son apparently really, really hated that thing and worked to ensure that others set the record straight. And one of the problems they had is that the play whitewashed Robeson's radical politics. And so the son got together luminaries like Maya Angelou and Julian Bond, and they published a letter calling this play a pernicious perversion of the essence of Paul Robeson, because they left out his socialist views. And Robeson was deemed a dangerous fellow by the powers that be, and during the McCarthy era, of course, was placed under pretty much constant FBI surveillance because of his criticisms of the government. And I guess it was that I wanted to get to, because that gets us to our next topic, which is somebody else who had the FBI going through his trash and following him around, and it is the aforementioned Pete Seeger. And let me get a break in here, and then we'll come back and talk about that oneer, Pete Seeger.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
It's the Women in Film and Television International Summit, and it is coming right here, May 16th through the 18th at the Westin. If you are interested in the film and television industry, this is where you will want to be. Panel discussions, screening, speakers. I'm going to be emceeing a dinner Saturday night where we'll honor the director of Twilight, Catherine Hardwicke. To register, just go to wifti.summit.org. wifti.summit.org. Oh, by the way, the summit is open to anyone, men included.
Pittsburgh City Paper's Travel Guide magazine is available now. Pick up one today for a look at great travel destinations in PA, Ohio, New York, and West Virginia. Plus the Silkscreen Film Festival, food trucks, and news of the weird. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania. And on the web at pghcitypaper.com, your smartphone at citypapermobile.com, and at the iPhone App Store and Google Play.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okay. Oh, good heavens, here we are back again, and I have been joined by my friend Ginny Hildebrand. I'm not going to go into the string of adjectives and nouns. Let's see. Yeah, I will.
Go ahead. I
Okay,
haven't heard
here, let's
for
see.
a while.
Well, let me see. Friend.
Dog groomer.
Dog groomer, former coal miner and machinist, lefty. She thinks I'm conservative. Lefty.
Lesbian.
Musician, songwriter.
That's plenty.
There's more. There is more. Activist. Jeez. Political activist. And that's sort of, all those things sort of come together because Ginny is the moving force behind this celebration of Pete Seeger, which is happening this Saturday, at the First Unitarian Church in Shadyside. It's on the corner of Ellsworth and Morewood, and right across from that, Tony Winchester Thurston. And
7:30.
And 7:30. Okay. And this is called Sing Out
For Pete.
For Pete. Pete being, of course, the great Pete Seeger. And, I mean, there's just going to be a lot of wonderful music, obviously. And I suppose the audience is going to be doing a lot of singing, too.
Definitely.
A lot of singing. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Pete Seeger. And let's start, though, about his Pittsburgh connection, because it's interesting. Chris Potter on Friday very quickly mentioned something about him being invited here and then all hell breaking loose and then blah, blah, blah. So tell the story.
I will tell the story, but Pete's coming through Pittsburgh goes back to the 1940s when he was traveling around with Woody Guthrie.
Okay.
And they came here together to sing to support mine workers and steel workers and so forth. But, let's see, do we jump over HUAC then and just mention
No,
it?
we don't have to do it chronologically. So
Okay, so anyway, what happened in 1962, this is after Pete had been convicted of contempt of Congress because he refused to answer questions. Anyway, he was supposed to come to Pittsburgh to do two shows. One was on WQED, the early WQED, in 1962, and he was going to be on the Dimple Depot show.
Dear God in heaven, what the hell was that?
Dimple, Lord knows, but
That sounds like a children's show.
it was a children's show, and that's what he was invited to be on.
The Dimple Depot?
That's right, Dimple.
Any of you remember the Dimple Depot? Let us know.
And people just freaked out and started writing letters and calling the station, telling them not to let this horrible, communist with horns on the children's show. Let me tell you, one or two of the verses that he was probably going to sing that day. It was his children's version of the famous "Turn, Turn, Turn" that he wrote with Ecclesiastes, and then later was done by the Byrds. But in this version, it goes. There's a time to cry and make us a fuss, a time to leave and catch the bus, a time for quiet, a time for talk, a time to run, a time to walk. Now, that
We
sounds...
can't have that!
So anyway, they canceled his appearance in April of
Okay, so QED,
1962.
weak-kneed, bows to folks because they will not allow this rabble-rouser to inculcate his hideous values on their dear little dimpled depot darlings.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, he was also supposed to do a show at the Young Hebrew Men's what is it?
YMHA. It's like it's YMCA, only it's Hebrew instead of Christian.
And it was in Oakland in those days. And they weren't really sponsoring it. The two couples, the Trachtenbergs of that time and the Corrigans were the ones that were bringing him in. But they had just rented
Wait a
that
minute,
facility.
Corrigans aren't Jews.
That's all right.
Well, I thought you said this was the Hebrew
I'm not Jewish
Association.
either. Well, that they were renting the space.
Oh, okay.
So, but then they started getting calls and letters. The manager of the
YMHA,
and so they canceled the show. Capitulation. So then. Members of the congregation of the First Unitarian Church, which is where we're holding this event in Shadyside, the board met and they decided to open up their sanctuary to Pete Seeger and have concert there. And they said not because we support him, but because we are defending due process. In other words, they didn't want him to be convicted of something in the press when his whole conviction was on appeal, and also his First Amendment right to association and to speak his views. And so they opened up the church, and the Post-Gazette article after it is just fantastic. It says, the headline was, Seeger wins audience. Standing ovation given controversial singer. Crowd sings, laughs with him. They had to have 2 shows, and each show was packed. So Pittsburgh came forward.
So this was 1962.
Mm-hmm. April.
I got news for you. 62 is really the 50s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 62 is the 50s. The 60s didn't really start till like about 64, 65, 66, right? So that's interesting. 62.
Yeah.
And so how wonderful. So we're going back to the same church and singing Pete's songs.
Right. So what we have is we have about 13 different individuals or groups that are performing their favorite Pete Seeger song. A lot of it is going to be sing-along. But in addition to that, we have things that aren't just the usual suspect kind of things in this situation. One is Vanessa German is writing an original poem around the song Turn, Turn, Turn. We have some technology. If it works for us, we're going to have some clips of Pete Seeger, and we're going to have a dramatic and somewhat comic reading of excerpts, dramatic reading of excerpts from his...
Oh, from the HUAC
yes.
testimony. So he was called before the House On-American Activities Committee, and Ginny had sent me the transcript. It is a riot. You're either... You can laugh at it, or you can just say, how absurd, how the silliness of it. Of HUAC. And actually reading that HUAC stuff, it sounds sort of like it's very contemporary in that you can see like current day Republicans asking the exact same questions as they maybe do. It looked like a Darrell Issa, It looked like that kind of a thing. And did you, on the afternoon of March 22nd, 1949, sing If I Had a Hammer for the so-and-so club?
And, of course, they were just echoing the inquisitors of the Inquisition, not to mention the people who tried women in Massachusetts and so forth for witchcraft, which is why it was called the witch hunt in the 1950s. Right.
It was unbelievable. So what was interesting, so Pete turns up at HUAC. He does have a lawyer with him. And he doesn't plead the fifth like a lot of people did, but he just keeps telling the guys, no matter what they asked him, he kept saying essentially the same thing, like, hey, I'm not going to answer that. It's none of your business, essentially, is what he said.
Right.
What I sang, when I sang, what music I sang, who I sang to. And he kept telling the committee, I've sung for communists. I've sung for Catholics. I've sung for
hobos. I've sung for the Rockefellers. And
That's
I'm proud to say I never refused to sing to anyone based on the color of their skin, their political ideas, or their religion.
That's right.
Right.
And he just kept telling me. And he said at one point, would you like me to sing? He was willing to sing for them.
He said, I think you'd find out I have more in common with you if you would let me sing you one of my songs. But it was incredible because, people felt forced to take the Fifth Amendment because to say I refuse to answer on the grounds that it might incriminate myself, that way they could avoid...
It protected them.
It protected them from naming names because that's what they were after is this, conspiracy. I mean, they were after getting a lot of people fired out of government, out of the arts, all kinds of out of education. And so that's what they did. But you know what? That was originally developed for people who were guilty of something. That's what, and you didn't have to incriminate yourself. So when this happened in the 50s and people took that, people would think, see, they're guilty. They're afraid to say it. And so Pete Seeger, instead of being boxed in that corner, decided that he was going to risk going to jail. Because if he answered only the questions he wanted to and refused to answer other questions, then he could be in contempt of Congress. And that's what he was convicted of. He said, you have overstepped your authority, and it is immoral to impinge on the First Amendment rights of people to free speech and free association, and I will not participate in that. And so he was convicted.
He was convicted of contempt, cited for contempt, right, and sentenced to a year in prison, which he never served.
No, it was finally sometime later in the 60s.
It went on. The appeals went on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And it was interesting if you read Pete's HUAC testimony, you see that he was on at the same time that Elia Kazan was called, and Elia Kazan is certainly famous as well, one of the amazingly great directors, without a doubt. But he took the wrong road in the 50s, and Kazan famously did name names. And so that when they finally gave him a special Oscar about 8-9 years ago, maybe
not that long.
Maybe not that long ago, and it's still controversial as hell because of his politics, because of what Kazan had done. But you cannot take away the brilliance of his films, none of which I can. On the Waterfront, what else did he do? He just did a million great movies.
Yeah, I can't think. I would have said On the Waterfront, too.
Yeah, I mean, just extraordinary talent. But
true,
a jerk a serious jerk. Really. There was just a bio out on him, and he's a jerk. The same could never be said of Pete Seeger, who's like just the...
Well,
is he as kind, do you think, as he is the,
Well, in handing out...
keep doing this.
In handing out flyers for... I'm like Khrushchev.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. You lefties, geez.
Handing out flyers for this. I ran into people who said, I once sat around a campfire and sang a song with Pete Seeger. Or I was once at a music conference and I was in a workshop with Pete Seeger. Everyone you talk to says that this is the segue from the first thing you started off with, Lynn, is how open he was and what a happy, optimistic person he was. Because... in large part, I'm sure, because of this openness, how he met coal miners and coal miner family. He met, people in South Africa, in Asia, in Vietnam. He traveled the world and brought this music to the world.
But Pete, okay, so you're thinking, Pete traveled with Arlo Guthrie, and Woody Guthrie, but Woody was from true poverty.
Yes.
Pete was not, right? Pete's family he came from a very educated
family. I wouldn't say they were very wealthy.
Well, no, but he chose, to sort of go out on the road when he certainly didn't have to.
He went to private schools, and I think he actually started at Harvard. And he met Lomax. What's his first name? This guy that was a archivist of American...
Alan Lomax.
American folk music.
Right. Who HUAC also went after.
Right. From Kentucky, from West Virginia. Folk music from the folk. And he met him and became so inspired that he left college and started traveling the country. And then he ended up hooking up with Woody Guthrie for a while.
Yeah.
A great duo.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. So, Pete, this would have been his 95th coming up, and we want to celebrate him here. Also because, I mean, the gift some of the songs that people don't know what his output was. Like you just said, Turn, 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 which the Byrds made famous. But If I Had a Hammer, which you might know from Peter, Paul, and Mary,
but
right?
It was actually written in 1949 when he was with the Weavers.
And what are some others that people know? I'm trying to think.
Oh, Where Have All the Flowers Gone?
Oh, God.
Let's see.
Did Dylan ever cover any of his stuff, or no? I don't think so.
I don't think Dylan did, but I wanted to tell you that story. I've been reading this fabulous book called Where Have All the Flowers Gone, a sing-along memoir by Pete Seeger that is just fantastic, which goes through his life by going through
his music
and where they came from, and how he describes that there are very few songs that he sings that one person wrote. Because the nature of folk music, and Woody Guthrie's certainly true, he would take an old tune from something and put in some words about a coal mine strike and so on and so forth. Where Have All the Flowers Gone, in fact, he didn't write all the verses. The circle of Where Have All the Flowers Gone, where it finally ends up, the young girls are picking them, and finally they're popping up on the graves of soldiers. That circle was really completed with a friend of his, Joe, years after he had written the original one. But that's another very famous one. I don't know how familiar people are with The Big Muddy, but that's the one that CBS banned from the Smothers Brothers. Pete was always running into. That's such a nice guy, always running into trouble.
He was trouble. The Big Muddy.
Yes.
And The Big Muddy is about?
The Big Muddy is about, it's about Lyndon Johnson, but he does so many things. He makes his point by telling a story. And this is the story of a platoon training down in Louisiana, and the captain wants to ford a stream. And the sergeant and the soldiers are saying, that looks like it's mighty deep and it's flowing pretty fast. They call it the Big Muddy. And he says, no, I forded this stream last year, no problem. So he starts off, and everybody's got their 40-pound back on and their crazy rifles with them, and they're crossing the stream. And the first thing they are knee-deep in the Big Muddy. And the captain keeps going, and the next thing you know, waist-deep in the Big Muddy, then neck-deep in the Big Muddy, and then, whoop, captain disappears. Anyway, so it's a song about being the big fool says to push on. We're neck deep in the Big Muddy, but the big fool says to
push on.
That's
Keep going.
So, and anyway, the Smothers Brothers, if any of you remember them, they had this wonderful variety show that they were very, very funny and talented musicians, and they made a lot of fun folk songs, as a matter of fact. But their ratings were high, and CBS said to them, what can we do to make you happy? They said, we want to have Pete Seeger on. So this is in the 1960s, 67.
Yeah, this is already when the 60s were happening.
Exactly.
Right.
In 67.
Yeah.
So Pete comes on, flies to Los Angeles, he tapes the show, does 3 or 4 songs, and the last song is Big Muddy. They send the tape back to the CBS honchos in New York. They listen to it, and when it broadcasts, 1 second Pete Seeger has a guitar in his hand, and the next second he has a banjo. And the song Big Muddy is gone. Gone in the Big Muddy.
Clipped.
And so the Smothers Brothers are furious, and they go to the Times, and they say, they're cutting our best jokes, they're cutting our best song by Pete Seeger. So it was a fight for about a year, and finally he flew back to L.A. In January of 1968.
And
sang it, and it was broadcast. And Pete says, so a month after that, Lyndon Johnson went on television and announced that he
would not seek another term.
So he says, who knows? Who knows what helps?
Well, this sounds like a lot of fun. This Saturday, when do the doors open?
Well, the show starts 7:30 promptly. It seats 300. We think it's possible 300 people are going to show.
Oh, I do too.
So please show up early, get your seat. There will be an intermission where you can buy CDs from these people who are performing, and you can have some snacks. But the show itself is free. We're going to pass a hat, that's for sure, because we have expenses. But don't anybody not come. This is in the spirit of Pete Seeger. Just come on out and be a part of it.
Well, you can bet it'll be whatever size the crowd. These will be wonderful people, and an opportunity to work on your striking up conversations with strangers. And there's nothing more wonderful than singing together.
Absolutely.
To make you. So if you want to feel happy on Saturday, we got the perfect prescription. Thank you so much, Jenny.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me
This
on.
is going to be great.
7:30 Saturday night.
Unitarian
Saturday night.
Church,
That's
Shady
right.
Side. Okay.
And turn out for the love of Pete.
Hey, is that where that comes from? No, I guess not. Okay, take a break. We'll be back.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
BurghBargains.com is your best bet for great deals in the Burgh. Log on today for exclusive bargains from your favorite events and shows like PyroFest, City Theater, and the Improv. Plus discounts on gift cards to P.F. Chang's, Wing Hearts, and Rumfish. BurghBargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. BurghBargains.com.
This is the sound of a flat-screen television hurled off a building. Now the new bike your kid wants. These are the things you could have, all cast into oblivion. Because when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have bought with it. Use Energy Star light bulbs and appliances, and you could save hundreds of dollars a year. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Oh, geez, I don't know whether to tell you this terrible story from Chicago. Do I? Yeah. I was in Chicago this weekend and family events, and I was with my sister-in-law at one point. We had an hour to kill. It was my brother's wife, and she wanted to try to find a gift for her sister's birthday. So I said, well, we're sort of in this is a fancy neighborhood we're in. I said, I don't know if you're going to find anything. I said, but let's go. So we walk down. Is that Oak Street? I don't know. But this is where every shop is, Jimmy Choo is an entire store, and then Le Bouton, is that his name? It's these stupid shoe guys we were talking about before that you can't, if you wear their shoes, you're going to destroy your feet. Right. And Prada and blah, blah, blah. And we're Barney's. I said, I've never been in a Barney's. I said, let's go in there and see how. So we go in, and I start looking at, there was like a little wallet. It was like this little wallet, and it wasn't very pretty. It was like this revolting neon green, and I picked it up. I just wanted to see how much. I unzipped it, and the price tag was there. $375. It was crap. There was nothing attractive about it. There was nothing particularly utilitarian about it. It was just $375. So we looked at a few other things, and I looked at her. I said, let's get out. I mean, it just annoys me. I said, let's get out of here. So we got out. We crossed the street, and we start walking down, and I said, I don't think I can go in. I mean, we can't go in at any of these places. But then there was a store. I said, oh, my God, let's check this out. It was a French children's store. I'm trying to think of what Le obscenity. Le revoltingness. We walk in, and I said to her as we're walking, I said, don't say anything about it. I said, let's not cause a scene or anything. I said, we'll just reconnoiter. Well, the clothes are, so cute. I mean, I pulled out a little dress. It was this little dress, little white cotton with smocking, and I can see. I mean, I think I might have even had a dress like that when I was a kid or something. Maybe my grandmother made it. I don't know. Price tag. We're back in the 300s again. Can you imagine what? You're going to put a $390 white smock dress on an 18-month-old kid who's going to spit up all over it and outgrow it the next day. What is the purpose of that? Then they had my sister-in-law thought she found something that was actually, it was a little teeny box, and it had little pairs of socks in it. And she pulled one and said, oh, look how cute, little pair of socks. I forget. I'm sorry. I think each little sock might have been $40. I don't know. Then we start asking questions, and the woman says, well, we have this skincare line. I said, for babies? Yes. They had massage oil for babies. They had cologne for babies. They had and then there was this doll. And they said, yes, we sell the doll. The doll costs God knows what, and it comes naked. And then you have to, of course, buy their little doll clothes. And I pulled out this not particularly cute little dress, this big. I don't know what it is about the threes, but it was $365 for a doll's dress. And I finally couldn't take it anymore because and there was this little teeny shoe, this big, and it was like just a little slipper, like a little ballet slipper, $290. For something that, and you know what? I started developing a tick. But so we left. And we were just, what the? I'm sorry. It's despicable. We walk around the corner, and all of a sudden there's this man in front of us. His back is to us. He's large. He's a big, hulking figure in rags. Rags to the point that on his feet he had tied cardboard. It was tied around his feet, and you could see his heels and the back of a leg, and they were ulcerated, and he looked. This is something, if you, in the movie Les Mis, if you saw, you would think, oh, that's overdoing it a bit, right? Here he was amidst this repulsive, obscene, immoral decadence, shuffling through, barely able to walk. And Kathy and I looked at each other, and we just, you don't know whether to cry, scream, or start killing people. It's like the rage I felt. And everybody's just, and we're part of it. We're part of this, this human comedy, tragedy, morality tale. Something's really wrong. Something's really wrong in a country where there is this street full of clothes and gizmos and gadgets that, cost outrageous sums of money. And there's somebody who is in, I don't know. And my sister-in-law, Kathy, works in a homeless shelter. That's what she does as her job. And so I said, would it help? What do you do? I said, she said, every one of these is a different, everything is a different story. It's never one size fits all. You don't know. She said, if you try to help one, that one person's troubles are usually so complex that you begin to see that social policy has a real problem. Because what works for this person, what this person needs might not work for others. But we are totally disengaged as a culture from the needy. She was telling me about a family. She has a family in the shelter right now. 2 children, 2 little girls, two young parents. And they've been there almost 3 months, and at the end of 3 months, they've got to kick them out. And this is in a more benign environment in, a college town where maybe there's other things. And she starts telling me about this guy, how he goes and panhandles the father. And he's standing on a corner saying, vet, down on my luck, blah, blah, blah. I said, does he make much that way? She said, not really. And she said, and then the cops arrested him one day and said, you're not allowed to do that here. And they took him to jail. And she said, here's the thing. He is allowed to do that. He was breaking no law whatsoever. They take him to jail and then find out that he had a warrant, an outstanding warrant. You know what the warrant was for? Fishing without a license. And he'd been fishing because also he was trying to feed his family. Fishing without a license. He did 2 days in the jail before they got a public defender to get both of these charges dismissed against him. And here's the next little catch-22. When you're jailed in Ann Arbor and you get out, you owe Ann Arbor the cost of them having put you up for the night and feeding you. This guy doesn't have the money to pay that. So now he's arrested wrongly. They hold him for 2 days because he turns out to be a fugitive who hadn't gotten a fishing license. And you see how we just keep screwing with the poorest of people and the people who need help. We just keep making it harder and harder and harder. And I really don't know how people who can shop in those stores sleep at night if they don't do anything for others. I don't know how do they? It's despicable. Despicable. And people who say, oh, when you start that, you're doing class envy. You just wish that that is so not true. You can take refuge in believing that when people point out this outrage, this chasm between the haves and have-nots in this country, that somehow it means that we are desirous of being one of those repulsive human beings. Melanie writes, there's a really good documentary available on Netflix called Greenwich Village that includes a lot of Pete Seeger footage. Okay, and we only have a few minutes left, and I just want to say this about Donald Sterling, this repulsive owner of the Clippers. I'm sure you know about this. It's mind-boggling. I hope the NBA figures out a way to kick this SOB out. And I would like to see a stronger display by his players than they put on last night when they just reversed their jackets so their logo didn't show and threw their jackets on the ground. How about not playing? How about if the team they're playing, even though it's the finals, the playoffs, how about if all these black players sit down till this guy goes? Your NBA playoffs ain't happening. How about that? And then somebody explained to me how the NAACP in Los Angeles was going next month to give this guy a major award. He was always known to be a racist. He just hadn't been caught in this with a recording like he was now. How? What's with? It's my question I'm leaving you with. What the hell is with the Los Angeles NAACP? They have withdrawn this honor, but they gave this SOB a Lifetime Achievement Award about 6 or 7 years ago. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, that's it. That's it for me. I think my sister's going to join us tomorrow. We'll talk some more. She's got an interesting story that was in the St. Louis newspaper, and it was about some school students from Pittsburgh. And when she asked me about the story, I said, I never heard anything about that. How odd is that? So Susan from St. Louis will tell us something wonderful about what's going on in Pittsburgh about some of our school students. Okay? Okay? Have a great day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.